Christmas came early for Cipher and IREN this year, with Cipher signing a deal with Amazon and IREN inking one with Microsoft. This is the Mining Pod brought to you by Cleanspark, and for this week's news roundup, we've got two hyperscaler deals with Mag 7 companies on the docket for two of the leading Bitcoin miners pivoting to AI. We also cover some of the Q3 earnings from the miners who have released their quarterly financials, specifically looking at some of their qualitative updates for forward-looking guidance. We also take a look at a lawsuit that involves some Bitcoin mining companies and OpenAI for a transformer failure, allegedly, at a data center in Texas. And we close out with the question, is China going to win the AI race? NVIDIA CEO seems to think so. And for this week's Cry Corner related to Cipher, why Berkshire Hathaway can't deliver megawatts to Amazon, so they have to look elsewhere, like Bitcoin miners, for that capacity. You're listening to the Mining Pod, and we will be right back after a message from our sponsors. Guys, there is a serious problem right now in Bitcoin mining, and we need to talk about it. You need to pay attention to this. Bitcoin miners are identifying as AI companies, and people keep missectoring them because they say, well look, your infrastructure is clearly for Bitcoin mining. What do you want me to do about it? I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You need to call FBox, the leading digital infrastructure company with all-encompassing cooling solutions. FBox designs industry-leading air, hydro, and immersion cooling systems for Bitcoin mining and AI and HPC data centers. I want to highlight that. If you're a Bitcoin miner who needs to bridge the gap, if you're pivoting or doing hybrid operations, they can build cooling solutions and infrastructure for both your Bitcoin mining and your AI and HPC operations. And they have an in-house API that lets you monitor it from the web or on mobile. So go to www.fbox.tech/contact to learn how FBox can help you optimize your digital infrastructure today. Welcome back to the Mining Pod, y'all. We've got the dynamic duo on today, Colin Harper and Matt Kimmel. Will is out this week. We've got a lot of stories to chew through. As always, AI headlines and some cool original reporting from Blockspace. So we will get to those right after we do the difficulty update from difficulty weatherman Matt Kimmel. Matt, what are we seeing in the bleak forecast?
Bleakness is correct. There is blood in the streets. We are testing $40 per petahash second per day for the hash price. These are levels that we haven't visited since the fallout of Liberation Day tariff announcements in April. We just had a plus 6.33% difficulty adjustment. And it looks like we're about flat on the next one. We're about 60% of the way through the epoch. Nothing to write home about in the fee market. Bitcoin's price has retraced from the highs at 126 down to what has been holding as support at about 100. At the time of recording, we're 101K. And what we've basically been seeing is hash rate continue to go up and price take a breather, right? And so hash price is struggling. But Colin, is this falling on deaf ears? Do people care anymore about the mining economics, or is it just about the AI announcements? It's almost like this is a conversation between enthusiasts amongst friends these days.
Yeah, it's almost like an afterthought in a way. All of the juice and the excitement is from the big headlines from AI deals with these Bitcoin miners. But, I will just say to your point, it's just week in and week out, it's been kind of Charles Dickens' Bleak House. When we look at the data, there's just hash price continues to get crushed. Fees are nowhere to be seen. Hash rate continues to grow, but now it's kind of steadying out. We had a brief reprieve for hash price over the summer with curtailment in the US, but now it's back to the dog days. I wouldn't be surprised if we see all-time low maybe sometime soon. I think that depends on if Bitcoin decides to retreat a little bit further, but wouldn't be surprised to see hash rate kind of flatline here, given the fact that hash price economics are so paltry. But to your point, the people don't care about hash price and hash rate and all that. If you do, send us a note. tell us that we're wrong, but we will get to the headlines that I think a lot of people were most interested in for this week. And the one that we were leading with is Cipher Mining adds Amazon Web Services as data center client, announces a 1 gigawatt data center JV as well. So Cipher Mining just inked its second hyperscaler tenant. It's a $5.5 billion, 15-year lease. And Amazon Web Services will host artificial intelligence workloads at Cipher's Barber Lake facility. It's worth roughly 300 megawatts and will go live starting July 2026, according to Cipher's estimations. And in addition to this, Cipher also announced that they are going to stand up a 1 gigawatt site called Colchis, I believe, or Colchis. Don't know how they pronounce that. They'll finance most of the project. Cipher will finance most of the project and expects to retain a 95% ownership in the site. So big moves from Cipher, just massive deals being inked. But with everything else, the S&P, Bitcoin, etc., it's down on the day. Actually, I think about 10%, 11% on the day right now. But it's just kind of been ensnared in this broader market sell-off. Matt, second thoughts on this story?
AWS infrastructure provider. I mean, it's a big deal. The biggest companies in the world deciding to work with our little industry. So, I mean, it can't be overblown. This is a $5.5 billion deal for, across 15 years for a company whose market cap a year ago was under 2 billion. I think right now I was checking before the show. So factoring in that 10% drawdown there, a little over $8 billion dollar company at the moment. They had a convert oversubscribed 7 times. Speak about investor appetite and confidence. And I think it's at like 0%. So, I mean, just incredible strides, right? And it's kudos to Cipher, but it's not the only ones, right? It's the several companies across the industry are capitalizing on the opportunity of having secured cheap power, figuring out how to build out data centers to serve this boom.
Yeah, and they're going to need all the financing they can get from those converts and other avenues to build out this 1 gigawatt data center and some of their other data centers for these AI ambitions. And quick correction on my end, in the pod with Kevin Dede that went out this week, I believe I said that the JV was with Amazon. I misspoke. So just wanted to correct the record on that. The JV is a separate news announcement that Cipher also released. And Cipher is not the only Bitcoin miner with a fat AI deal on the table this week. As always, IREN seems to be in the news. And I would say that this is probably their biggest deal year to date, at least. IREN signs Microsoft to $9.7 billion cloud compute deal. So IREN is signing a $9.7 billion 5-year agreement with Microsoft to deliver 200 megawatts of critical IT load at its Childress, Texas facility. The data centers named Horizon 1 and Horizon 4 will be a new liquid-cooled data center built in that facility. IREN, like Cipher, is selling off today. It's down about 10%, but it's kind of caught up in this wider market sell-off. Ultimately, though, just a huge deal for IREN, and I think a really watershed deal in terms of their AI development, signing a Mag 7 company, a significant hyperscaler like Microsoft.
Yeah, and not just Mag 7 company and Microsoft in this deal, but also Dell Technologies, right? By all means, kind of close there. One of the most notorious, hardware providers, and just in general, computers for enterprise out there. It's huge, right? We're multi-billion-dollar deals left and right for these companies. AWS in the last story, now Microsoft and Dell. It's absolutely major. I believe here that even though IREN has been kind of stockpiling some of the really high performance new age machines from NVIDIA, that those are used separately strategically within the firm. You can confirm this, maybe add more color for us there, but that these GB300s will be from Microsoft and managed by IREN in this deal. So interesting detail there. And I think the Dell deal is more about the procurement of servers, cables, software. A little bit different, but still $5.8 billion in that deal too. I mean, these are just huge, huge numbers.
Can you give us more detail on the Dell deal? This is an equipment procuring deal in addition to the Microsoft one?
Yeah, it seems like this is they're a part of more of the supply chain here. So like a little bit different from we're going to provide a facility in the compute and use our expertise in actually managing and operating these machines. This seems it's more about the facilitation of servers and cables and different components that go into these operations.
Back to what you were saying about IREN operating its own GPU clusters as well. I think that's why this deal is so significant, is because it really validates the PowerShell infrastructure model that we've seen most of the other miners do for these AI deals. It makes more sense for these miners to play into their core competencies of finding power, managing power, building infrastructure to deliver that power to hardware. But it doesn't make sense for them to necessarily manage this hardware. Managing a GPU cluster is much more difficult, orders of magnitude more difficult than operating hash rate. There's a lot of stuff going on the back end in terms of making sure that those computers are operating properly and delivering a clean product to the end customer. And I don't think that Bitcoin miners, at least right now, have that core competency. Maybe they can hire out for it. But my question then becomes for IREN, if you're leaning into this deal with Microsoft, what does that mean for your GPU cluster? Currently, they have a few thousand online. I think they have roughly 20,000 contracted. Is that an R&D play? Because there is a lot of IP, I'm sure, and there are internal processes for running these clusters that Amazon and Microsoft aren't just going to let these companies take away from these contracts, right? So I would imagine that maybe IREN has the ability to figure out how to run a GPU compute cluster without having to risk too much with its own Neo cloud. But that would be my question going forward. What play does IREN make? Do they lean into both? Do they lean into one? Do they take away lessons from one to grow the other? Open questions to, I think, in that segment, unless you have anything to respond with.
No, open question. Interesting to see what exactly they do. I mean, I just think the highlight here is the names of the companies that they're working with that have the balance sheet and the reputation that they do, right? And yeah, I mean, IREN getting a contract with Dell to acquire GPUs and cables and software for $5.8 billion, like those contracts, that's really something. I mean, these companies do. I mean, you would imagine, right, that they have strict diligence teams that are assessing their counterparties. Yeah, so it's the numbers fly off of the screen compared to what we were seeing not that long ago, Colin. Like, we're covering this sector like even just a year ago, but like especially 3 to 5 years ago. It's a totally different landscape.
We are Cleanspark, America's Bitcoin miner, a publicly traded company with the largest operating hash rate, powered entirely by self-operated infrastructure across 4 states. This is our proof of work, and we are setting the standard for what's next. Learn more about the intersection of energy and Bitcoin at cleanspark.com.
We'll move on to the next section. We're just going to do a quick recap of some of the numbers and mostly the updates from Q3 earnings so far. So lightning round really quickly here. RIOT raked in $180.2 million in revenue for Q3, and it also announced that it has begun breaking ground on 112 megawatt revamp of its Corsicana facility for critical IT capacity. Hopping over to Marathon. Marathon announces Q3 2025 revenue of $252.4 million, up 92% from last year, and had a mix of announcements regarding AI and HPC. Apparently, they signed a letter of intent with MPLX, a midstream oil and gas service, to supply 400 megawatts for data centers in West Texas. Who knows? Maybe that'll be used for AI and HPC, perhaps. We'll have more updates from that on the Mining Pod next week, actually, with Mara CEO Fred Thiel. So stay tuned for that. Going on to Hut 8, Hut 8 reported $83.5 million in revenue last quarter and had big updates on a roughly 1.5 gigawatt pipeline that it is developing across 4 sites across 3 U.S. states, a 1,000 megawatt site in Texas, 1 gigawatt, 300 megawatt site in River Bend, Louisiana, 180 megawatt site in Texas, and then another 50 megawatt site in Illinois. And to wrap it up, we also have Cipher Mining reporting $72 million for last quarter. And we already spent some time talking about some of their most exciting updates, so we won't bore y'all with that.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about Cipher. RIOT, I always think it's neat still working with grid operators, getting power credits in that way. Broke ground at the Corsicana site, right? So significant piece of bit there. Marathon, who knows what they're going to do with these data campuses, but the letter of it and the LOI, right, with MPLX, I think was kind of took the headline for me there. Also, just, they have so much Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? So crazy, like 50,000 coins. It's just a massive amount of Bitcoin. And then Hut 8. Yeah, Hut 8 is, I think, pretty interesting. They spun out American Bitcoin, but you kind of get a sense that they're probably pretty well connected because they, have those types of relationships. They're still going after, kind of vertically integrating and having data centers and compute and energy assets. So, curious to see if, they can hook some kind of deal at some point, similar to these, the kind of big ones that we talked about at the top of the show. That's kind of what stood out to me.
Yeah, and some of these are trading like they think deals are coming down the pipe. I think Hut 8 is one of those. Cipher was clearly one of those before these most recent deals came out. Same with IREN, honestly. It didn't make sense for IREN to be trading at the valuation it was just based on its NeoCloud compute. But now with this Microsoft deal and some of the deals we've seen previously, it makes total sense. We will move on to the next story, and we will have more Q3 recaps as these miners announce them. Check out our YouTube for live streams of the Q3 earnings calls. We'll have more coming up throughout the month as they trickle through as well. So quick note on this one. I don't want to belabor the story too much because I don't know how true it is. But at Core Scientific, a man who claims to have been working on a Core Scientific site is opening a lawsuit against Core Scientific, OpenAI, at all. I mean, there are a lot of people named in this lawsuit. I won't name all the companies involved. You can go check out this article on Blockspace, though, and you can see it for yourself. But this hit the wire at the end of last week. This man named Joseph Soroka is bringing a case against multiple corporate defendants, so include Core Scientific and CoreWeave, OpenAI, etc. Allegedly, he was working at a facility located on Gem Crystal Road in Denton. Soroka alleges that one or more high voltage transformers catastrophically failed while being energized, creating an explosion that sent burning oil into the air, causing second and third degree burns across his body. He is seeking monetary relief over $1 million for alleged, quote, life-altering injuries, including severe burns, physical impairment, disfigurement, and long-term disability. So all the caveats, allegedly, this is a court case. No idea what's going to happen. We have to figure out what happened and then figure out what the ruling is going to be, but we'll be keeping an eye on this. All that said, just a crazy lawsuit that involves OpenAI, I assume because OpenAI is using CoreWeave computers at the Denton facility. I think that's really the most interesting part of this. I mean, I hope Soroka, I hope he recovers, assuming he sustained the damage that he's saying he did. But the interesting thing here from a business perspective is this may hint that CoreWeave is OpenAI's contracting CoreWeave compute that is hosted at one of Core Scientific's facilities. Any thoughts here, Matt?
I mean, oh my God, I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
I guess if it's true, it's like your OpenAI is like collectively their deals are over like $1 trillion. I mean, give this guy some reprieve. Give him $1 million.
Chill out a few bucks.
Holy smoke. Yeah. High voltage transformer failure, that can be pretty nasty. I mean, I this is the first time I'm hearing about this story, so I have no clue about it.
Yeah.
I hope he's okay.
I mean, I'm editorializing here because we have to be careful about these things. Anything legal that gets talked about, like from an editorial standpoint, we have to say our opinion or like allegedly stuff like that. Editorializing in my opinion here for a second, like this seems like it probably happened, and I hope that he is okay because that sounds like a terrible thing, and sounds like a nasty experience. But we'll move on to I'm going to dub this as a dual cry corner because I don't really have expertise to speak on one of these last stories. But I think it's important, and Will dropped it into our chat, and I think it's a great one to cap off this conversation with. NVIDIA's Jinsing Huang says China will win AI race with US. I'm just going to read quickly a few pieces here from this Financial Times article. Huang's remarks come after the Trump administration maintained a ban on California-based NVIDIA selling its most advanced chips to Beijing following a meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping last week. The NVIDIA chief said that the West, including the US and UK, was being held back by, quote, cynicism, end quote. Quote, we need more optimism, Huang said on Wednesday on the sidelines of the Financial Times Future on AI Summit. He singled out new rules on AI by U.S. states that could result in, quote, 50 new regulations, end quote. He contrasted that approach with Chinese energy subsidies that made it more affordable for local tech companies to run Chinese alternatives to NVIDIA AI chips. Power is free, quote unquote, he said. You just got to make power free for them, and then they will come. I mean, I'm sure there's some truth to that. So when I read this, I can't help but think, is China winning the power race? And the answer to that is yes. If China wins the power race, China necessarily wins the AI race, especially considering they have the rare earth minerals to build the chips, to build the computers. They have the manufacturing capacity to do that as well, and they have the labor. It's hard not to be black-pilled about it, but it seems like on the hardware front, the only thing the U.S. has going for it is the fact that NVIDIA is incorporated in the U.S. And like that's like the one big piece we have. In terms of actually rolling out these things at scale, China has all the chips in place if they can execute. It's hard not to be a little black-pilled by that, but curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this is why some people have said that the AI should be a nationalized issue. We should have some kind of Manhattan Project. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much to read into this because it also, the U.S. banned NVIDIA from selling like their first class, newest age machines to China, and maybe that the Jensen is just upset about that, so he's just speaking out. But at the same time, it's like, there's he's citing that they have cheaper energy and looser regulations and just a culturally different attitude towards it, saying we're more, skeptics, cynics, stateside. And so, if you take those things together, I would say that the equation would result to it being challenging for us to win the race. But I don't know, because I mean, so we also have the really internet infrastructure companies stateside too that have deep pockets and are funding a lot of the innovation of the kind of hyperscalers in this space. Also OpenAI, Anthropic, right, and like many different Silicon Valley AI type of firms over here. Now, this is like a bit of your American bias comes out a little bit, and you kind of don't know what's going on globally as much. I don't spend as much time in the weeds, right, on this exact topic. And I kind of just have a general, like, I don't really know what China is doing or whether U.S. reporting on China is exactly true, right? And right, or even if Chinese reporting on China is exactly true, like, yeah. So it's tough to say. what I can tell is competition's ripe, that this is a global kind of race, and that AI is an important sector.
100%
that much is clear, just, based off what some of the countries are doing.
100%. And I 100% echo your sentiments in terms of national security things and geopolitical issues. I don't know what kind of supply chains China has for AI computers. I don't know what kind of talent they have to develop their own software and systems. I assume it's very good. I assume that they have things that are at least close to what we can do. But the things that I do know is that they have been building out energy assets voraciously. And I do know that they just build things well, and they build them quickly. And if you talk to some of the guys who work in mining, I've got a buddy who works for a Chinese company, and he lives in a massive tech city in China. And some of the things that he tells me about are just crazy. Flying, taxis, man. Stuff that we were promised in the Jetsons in the 60s. It actually operates over there, and it's not fairy tale stuff. It's crazy. So to your point, the information barrier between the East and the West, you never really quite understand what's going on. But I do know that the Chinese just seem to execute extremely well. And so I think that it'd be nice. I think most officials in the U.S. are taking it seriously, but I hope Jason's comments are taken at face value and seriously. All right, last thing for the True Cry Corner, because that really was more of a news segment. So you're wondering maybe why Amazon is tapping Cipher for data center deals. Well, Pacific Power, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, yes, that's Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, can't deliver power to Amazon. Amazon reportedly files complaint against Pacific Corp. I'm reading a headline posted by Matthew Siegel from Bloomberg on Twitter for alleged failure to provide power for new Oregon facilities. According to this Newswire headline on Bloomberg, the Berkshire Hathaway-owned Pacific Corp failed to provide enough power for a new data center in the state, according to media reports. I actually have some local color to this. Pacific Power got the crap suit out of them for some of the Palisade fires. Maybe it was the Pacific Palisade fires. It was one of the fires in California recently because they had downed power lines. Wherever you fall on that debate, maybe they were unjustly blamed for the wildfires. Maybe it's their fault for not updating their infrastructure. I also use Pacific Power, and my power goes out all the time. I would not be surprised if they're just not updating their infrastructure enough. I haven't looked into the issue, but just a few news headlines make my spidey senses go off. It's just fun to dunk on Warren Buffett, too.
Right. Yeah.
Even though he probably has nothing to do with it.
Is this where we say Pacific Power is rat poison squared?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. That's his famous quote about Bitcoin. I guess it's a small sample size example of why some of these, what would be called small cap tech growth, like little Bitcoin mining companies are getting deals with it's the biggest companies in the world. It's because they've been focused on operational efficiency,
yes,
managing energy infrastructure for years now. And they've got power contracts. They have the supply chain relationships for the power distribution units and the transformers and the containers, right? Like all of these things matter. And I guess they're passing muster, right? When it comes to the diligence of the requirements of these big tech firms, these hyperscalers. The amount of deal flow that these companies are doing is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and the deals that these mining companies are getting are in the single digit billions of dollars. So it's not like they're capturing everything, but they're being included, right? They're being included. They're doing something right, and it's not the same as running a Bitcoin mining facility, right? You guys talked about that on this show forever. I don't need to go into all those details, but they've done enough to show that they can, and that they're getting some deals. So it's neat. I'm happy for the industry, Colin.
All my homies getting dubs. It is nice to see. And the one last thing I'll say about it before we close out, I wonder how much it also speaks to just Texas and Texas's position in this data center revolution, because we had a podcast with Bo Turner of Abundant Minds, and he talked through some of the problems with securing power in Oregon in terms of the way the power market is structured. It's not like Texas at all. It's not a free market. There are very, very few companies operating here. So for Amazon, I'm not sure about the specifics, but Pacific Power was presumably their only choice in the area for that data center. I'm assuming it's up near the Dalles, up right outside of Portland, near the Columbia River Gorge. That's where a lot of Oregon's hydropower comes from. You move to Texas, and it's like you're a kid in a candy store. You know, as long as you find the right partner. I mean, I know finding power now is troubling or is difficult because there are so many people competing for it. But you actually have a free market where you can choose who you're getting your power from. And that has to be just an incredibly refreshing thing, considering, you know, you just had this single point of failure with Pacific Power preventing you from rolling out a data center. So anyway, we'll close it out there. Thank you all so much for hanging with us and tuning in. Stay tuned next week for the Maripod and also some earnings calls that we will be live streaming, and for a spicy newsletter on lava. If you don't know what that is, go to Bitcoin Twitter. Put it in the search bar. You'll figure out pretty quick.
Lending.
Peace and love. What's up?
Lending.
Lava lending.
L is for lending. And lava. And love from the mining pod.
Love from the mining pod. Have a good weekend, y'all.